Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, star maker to entrepreneurs who want to unlock their potential and command any stage. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You are in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. Welcome to the show. Here we go. Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, and welcome to this episode of Thrive, How to Write Like a Pro and Birth Your Book. On this episode of Thrive, my special guest is Catherine Storing. Catherine Storing is the founder of Confidence Unchained, where she teaches professionals and entrepreneurs how to find their authentic writing voice so they can create content and books with meaning. Catherine is a two-time best-selling author and the author of 13 of her own books, with her newest title, A Match Made in Heaven, How to Marry Your Vocation with Your Divine Calling. Catherine is a dynamo and talks on this episode on how we as entrepreneurs can find the time, can find the inspiration, and can find the energy to write our own books. She gives us her specific tips on when an entrepreneur should launch their first book in their business, how you can find the time, carve out that time and space to write so you can actually produce the book that you want to create. Catherine shares with us how to know when to release which book. Sometimes we have a lot of content that we want to share. We have more than one book that we want to publish, but we don't know what order to do it in. And she shares her insights about that as well. And we also talk about how important it is to find and follow that inner voice, that voice that leads you down a path. Sometimes you're not sure where you're going. Catherine started out as a stylist, then became a confidence coach, and now she is a writing coach. And it's been so exciting for me having her on the show twice now to watch her bloom, to watch her journey grow, and to watch her evolve into this real powerhouse. She's speaking all over the place, and she's helping hundreds of people write books now. It's been just so inspiring to watch her journey. So I hope you really enjoy this episode with her. She was so generous and so dynamic with her content and her presentation. I loved interviewing her. I hope you love this episode as well. And I'd also like to let you know that I have some exciting things going on right now. I have relaunched my coaching packages. And if you are somebody, an entrepreneur, professional who wants to create an authentic, really aligned personal brand that reflects who you are, your value, your voice, you want to bring together the different pieces of what you do into one clear message so you can articulate your value, so that you can express your personality, so you can speak from your heart and get your message and the transformation that you provide to the right people. I invite you to check out these packages. It's branding for heart-centered, high-value entrepreneurs who are ready to get their message out in a big way. We work on the messaging, your packaging, your positioning, and your talk so that when you are talking to an audience, people are on the edge of their seat and ready to buy your offers. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to heatherpoduska.com/private coaching. And there's also a consulting tab right on my website at heatherpoduska.com. Just hit the consulting tab. I would love to talk to you. All right, on to the show. I hope you love this episode with Catherine Storing and this episode of Thrive. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You're in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. I'm Heather Poduska, your host, and I am so excited to have my guest here today, my friend Catherine Storing. Catherine Storing is the founder of Confidence Unchained, where she teaches committed leaders and professionals how to embrace their authentic voice in order to write impactful and relevant books and content. Catherine is a two-time best-selling author with over 13 books to her credit, where she writes to empower people all over the world to help them develop more confidence, self-esteem, and to showcase their unique gifts and beauty. Catherine is also an accomplished keynote speaker who's graced the stages of TEDx and Boston Inbound and has been featured in many publications, including the Huffington Post. Clearly, Catherine is a beautiful force of nature, and we're delighted to have her here on the show. Thank you, Catherine, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've known each other a while now, and it's been so amazing to watching the transformation from how I knew you when we first met to where you are now. And we were just talking about that before the show started, about how entrepreneurs often do that and how it takes a while to find your path and your calling and, you know, where you want to spend your time and energy. So when we first met, you were doing styling, and now confidence coaching, and 13 books later, we're here. So tell us a little bit more about that path.
It's amazing when people know you from before.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, what are you doing now? Yeah, so I started with style because it was easy. People will ask me all the time, like, okay, can you help me? Can you, is this okay? Or does this go with that, right? So it was like, oh, yeah, I could do that. And then the confidence began with me finding my own confidence, finding my own style and how to do this, like how to own my crazy style, right? And people were asking me, can you help me do that? How did that happen for you? And that was okay for the longest time. But then I was feeling like a big part of me was missing. Like, am I complete? Am I whole? Like, why am I feel fragmented? And then in the back of my mind, there was my faith that I was keeping very separate from my business. So that's what coaches always tell you: keep it separate. Don't lead with it. Don't say anything. And that was always in the back burner. Like, talk about it, and I just couldn't do it.
So I had that experience too when I first started out. I remember someone really clearly saying to me, "You can't combine your singing with your business." And I just felt like someone was trying to cut off my arm because it's part of who you are.
Right.
And and I know that's something that you've really been working on with people. And you have a new book coming out that talks about that, right? How to combine those things so that you feel whole when you are running your business as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely, because the other person can tell. They know, they might not think you're lying, but they feel like, why am I not feeling fully connected to you? And that's what I realized. I was connecting with people, not just the right people. Now, there was nothing wrong with those people. There was just not people that I could be authentic me, and that's what happened when I finally decided to marry. That's what I call it, a fabulous marriage. When you put them together, it's like, finally, that's like the real me.
Yeah, and I talk about that too with singing. I mean, it's a singing metaphor, and I've said it on the show before too. It's like zipping up your support. You've got to zip it all together. And I think that when you're doing personal branding, and I think that's a part of what you're doing with your clients when you're doing it through writing and through speaking, is that you're the brand. You are the thing. And all these things are pieces and parts of what you do. But until you can tap into who you are, and we were talking about that before. So how did you think you got that to that place of being able to really tap in to let that out, all those pieces come together?
Right. So to be honest, I did it the hard way.
I think we all do it the hard way. I don't know if there isn't. I was like, does she have an easy way to do it?
No, I didn't. No. And that's why I wrote the book, A Match Made in Heaven, because I had to hit a wall. I was pushing my classes, which I love teaching. I went to school for that. I graduated, decided I don't want to teach. So I went to corporate America for 17 years. I got out early for good behavior. Hated the whole thing, right? 17 years later, I'm teaching, and I love every minute of it. So I'm pushing my classes. I'm sharing it out there. Class is amazing, by the way. And it falls flat. Like the first one, amazing. Huge success.
And this is a writing class.
It's a writing class. Okay. Write like a pro. Amazing class where I teach everything about writing. Like, I put my heart and soul into this class. Nothing. And I'm like, I'm pushing it the same way that I pushed the other time. I have partners. I have all this stuff going on. Nothing. It was flatlined completely. And I was stopped. Literally, I just couldn't do anything. And I'm like, I wanted to. I didn't feel like whenever I want to talk and the voice doesn't come out, it was like, I couldn't do it. And I was like, what's happening? And then I made a huge drastic change, and I went all faith only, which I love, right? So I started preaching. I started doing all this stuff, which I love. But then it was like the same thing happened. I was doing that really well. I was going to churches. It was amazing. And then wall again. Like something was missing again. And so I've been doing those drastic changes, and it was not working. Again, I had to go hit another wall. Had to stop. Now, I'm a workaholic. I love.
You have more energy than anybody I've ever met. And it's always happy energy too. Every time I turn on Facebook, it's like, there's Catherine.
right? To imagine a person like that feeling drained, feeling like they don't have a voice and feeling like you couldn't go on. So I would just be gone.
Yeah, you must have known something was really wrong.
Something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what. I just knew something was wrong. So I had to wait. Now, I'm not a patient person. Waiting is not in my DNA. I'm learning to wait. And I had to all of a sudden, right? Yeah. It was like, hello, they go together. Marry the two. That's why match made in heaven. How to marry your vocation to your divine calling. We all have this thing. Like for you, it's singing, right? For me, it's my faith. I lead with that. That's like part of like me breathing and me trying to teach somebody without speaking the way that I speak. It doesn't work. When I put them together, it was like coming home. It was so amazing, but I had to do it the hard way because I just didn't know how.
I have a question around that. So when you're doing more faith and only faith, you know those people totally are with you because they're faith-based too. Right. And when you're doing, what was the other part? Business part? Or?
It was a business part of teaching, just teaching.
Just teaching. So you know they're in that for that too. Right. So my question is, do you think you had any fear around bringing the business piece to the faith people and bringing the faith piece to the business people? Do you think that stopped you?
Oh, totally. Because I'm like, they're going to leave. Are they going to feel like I lie? I felt like I lie. And I'm a very integral person. Like I felt like I got these friends or these people and I lied because I kept a really big part of who I am to myself. So I was conflicted of, do I come out and tell them this is who I am? Or are they going to leave? Are they going to be mad? Like I let myself down. And I was having this whole conversation all by myself. When in reality, when I told people and I said, this is who I am, they're like, oh yeah, we know that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But we put ourselves in the closet, right? I mean, it's all these projections of what's going to happen. Right. And we all do it. We all do it. But one exercise that someone gave me a while back was like, play that scenario to the end. What if the worst thing happens? What then? So, and you get, what then? Okay, so this person leaves. What then? But that can also turn into a positive thing. Well, what then? Oh, well then what then? So it can be, your mind can go down this negative path, but then you also had that experience that when you married them, you had sort of those positive what then. So what then when you did that?
Yeah, so I had to come to a point where I said, what if everybody leaves? So I know how to start from scratch. I done that so many times. So when I left my island and moved here and I didn't speak a lick of English and I had to learn from scratch and find a job and find a church and find friends and everything.
And what island was that?
Dominican Republic. I was born and raised there, moved to Boston, which is my home now. And I had to start from scratch. So I know how to do that. Then I went from corporate America, which is what I knew. I was very successful there. I quit, do my business. So I had to start from scratch there too. And then I had a successful business styling people. And then I felt like I was lost and not complete. I quit that too. So I know how to start. So I had to get to the point where it's okay. I'll build it again. And I'll be authentic and it will be me and I'll help more people. And that's what's happening. Now when I'm speaking, I don't have to censor myself, if you will.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And as entrepreneurs, I think a lot of us get stuck in the scarcity mindset that I'm going to lose people. And not only am I going to lose people, but there's no one out there. And once you are true to that voice, then what you put out in bait, the fish bite.
Right.
So if you're putting out, whale bait, whale are going to come. But if you're putting out, bait for a minnow, you can't expect to get a walleye. Like the metaphor is not exact, but you know what I'm saying? What you put out, you attract. And if you're not putting out you, it's like dating, when you're not yourself on the date and then you get someone, you're like, well, I can't relax. And if I'm myself, it's like the whole mind game.
Right. Absolutely. And the whole thing is that you might get rejected. So what? When we're kids, we get rejected all the time. I remember asking a friend, "Do you want to hang out?" No, I didn't die. We're not going to die. Rejection is not the worst thing that can happen. It's really you saying, "I think you're cool, but not for me." And that's how I see it now. Somebody, I have a conversation with someone and it goes well, but at the end, I don't feel that nice feeling in my stomach. I might recommend somebody else. Or I might say, they might not call me. And that's great because I'm like, I didn't feel that either. I want to feel the butterflies. I want to feel like I'm your coach.
Yeah.
Because I know I can help you. If I cannot help you, it's like blood. I call it blood money. If you're my client and I cannot help you, I don't want it because it's going to cost me more than the money. It's not worth it.
That's a really good point. So this is your 13th book.
Yes.
That's great. So I have a couple questions around that because I'm sure a lot of people watching are interested in writing, but they have 1,000 excuses. I don't have time. I'm not a good writer. I don't know where to start. So how did you find the time to write 13 books? How did you do that?
So it started with, I was always a writer growing up. I wrote plays, poetry. I was always writing big, long letters as gifts for people. So I always knew I was going to be a writer. Then my family moved to Boston, and that dream died because I lost the language. Like, I'm like, what am I going to do?
Your first language is Spanish?
That was my first language, yeah. So 20 years go by, and then that's what happened. I was going to have a big birthday. I was turning 39, and I was like, 39? Like, I was just 25, literally, right?
Yeah, just yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
And it scared me into action, like into getting help. I'm like, okay, all I need is to finish one book. If I finish one book, I don't know why, but I knew that I just needed to see myself crossing the finish line. That's what happened. I crossed the finish line. I haven't stopped. 2.5 years later, I'm writing every day. And it came that being myself and realizing I have a story to tell. Like the book that I wrote, my second book, which is my story, and I shared my lack of self-esteem, like zero confidence. And I share the struggle of being myself, owning the wild, crazy hair that I have that now is my trademark. People look for it now, right? And people love it.
Yes.
But I got a lot of grief from it, tears and people making fun of it. I was bullied because of that. When I share that story and they see how happy I am and how confident, that gives them hope. And that's what pushes me every day. I have a story to tell. With my business, I just wrote this book about how to marry your vocation to your calling. There are other people out there that have the same problem. So for me, it's not finding the time. For me, it's accepting the calling that this is my purpose.
Ooh, I just got chills all over. I just went, shh. So it's not, let's repeat that. It's not about finding the time. It's about responding to the call of your purpose. That is deep. That is great.
So that means that you're going to say no to things.
Yeah.
I don't say yes to everything. And being okay with saying no. And what I learned, I don't know where I picked this up, but I have it on my Evernote app. And I always reference to that when somebody asks me to do something. And I acknowledge the person and say, wow, that's an amazing project. You must be so proud of yourself. That's amazing. Thank you so much for asking me. I'm honored. But however, if I said yes, I wouldn't be able to do your project or you justice. Thank you so much for thinking of me. However, for now, I'm going to have to say no. Let's revisit in a couple months. That is genius.
Yeah.
That's not mine, but it's genius.
I was just going to say, I'm going to rewind the show. I'm going to write that down. Anybody watching should write that down. Right. Yeah, because honoring yourself and having a respectful way.
Yes, and honoring the fact that they thought of you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's powerful. Like, thank you.
Yes.
And also, I appreciate and honor you so much that I'm not going to do a crummy job by saying yes. And the most important part, the most important lesson is I did not let myself down.
Oh, yeah.
Because I promised, I told you I'm going to start writing the follow-up to my next novel on that day. I'm going to do that. No matter what anybody else comes to me that day, I promise Catherine.
Wow.
Catherine is very important to me. Yeah. If I promise, and this is something that is, I'm serious about that. We promise ourselves so many things, and then we said, "Oh, it's just me," and that I had to break my own heart about that and realize, Catherine, you promised yourself, and that means if I had to say no to Heather or anybody else to keep my promise to me, I will do that. And that's what I help my clients get to that point of you don't have time, but you have time to help your friend time and time again when they don't plan. Really? You're going to say no to them. And that's hard, but I want that to be easier than you saying no to yourself. So
that's great. So that's 2 in 1. You know, first you follow the call, and second you prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
That's great. And in your response, you kind of answered my follow-up question, which is, how do you find inspiration? You have 13 books. So how do you find that inspiration? I think I know the answer based on what you said, but individually, does it just come to you in that moment, like this is what's calling me now, or do you map it out?
So both. So I use Evernote. I should be an affiliate because I always tell people about it, but they're amazing. So I have it on my phone, on my laptop, on my iPad, everywhere. So whenever I'm doing life, doing the dishes, picking up my daughter from school, whatever, a story will come to me, whatever I'm dealing with in the moment. So I'm very transparent And for some people that doesn't work, but that works for me. I need to share what's happening. So if I figure something out, and I think that's being from an island where everything gets fixed and nothing gets thrown away, I learned something and I'm like, ooh, I got to teach that to people. So if I learn a trick or shortcut or a way to do something better and faster, I'm going to teach that. The best way to do that is with a book. So if I'm driving, I get an idea, I put it on my Evernote, and I have a list. I think I have 45 titles on my list of books that I'm going to write.
So do I. I just don't have 45 books done.
Right. So then I have that list, and then I pray about it. Okay, which book is going to be first? So the book that I just finished, A Match Made in Heaven, that book's been there for a while. But this other book I can't even talk about it yet, even though it's awesome, that needed to be written first. However, it didn't have to be published first. So that's the difference of listening, because you know what book needs to come out first. What is the priority? So that book that I wrote before, that was for me. So every book, by the way, is for me first. And I own that. I needed to figure this out for myself. I needed to see it out there, put it together, and then like, okay, I got it. I teach it to you now. So I learn it deeply first, and then I give it to the rest of the people.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that you and I were talking about that as well. When you're singing, I feel like you're channeling something. You're channeling the music, the character, the composer. You're putting your feelings into it, but it's different than writing. Writing is your voice. Like you have your singing voice, but in terms of your story voice or your emotion,
your soul,
right? And that comes through performing, but it's different. It's different than writing, because writing you're committing to it by putting the words down. They're your words.
Yeah, in writing, you're naked. Yeah. And you have to be comfortable in a society where, it's all big taboo, right? But how do you're naked?
That's it. I'm doing the next show naked.
There you go. Right? But that's hopefully you will, in the sense of this is who Heather is completely. Because I'm all about clothes. You and I, very stylish. We love clothes. So no naked show. Right. But you're who you are. Right. So when you're writing, and you have picked up books, right? You know the author, you know who they are, and you pick up the book and you're like, who wrote this? Right? They're not there. Right. And those books don't do well because the person you buy the person. You don't buy books. You buy the person. Right. And you expect them to be in the book. So if I'm going to write a book, I need to be vulnerable. I need to be naked, and I need to be purposeful. Whatever I'm putting in that book needs to be there. If it doesn't belong there, it's just, I leave it out. Okay. So not everybody's comfortable doing that, right? I mean, like, I'm pretty comfortable being open. I'm open a lot, but even I am like naked, vulnerable. I'm like, am I ready for this? Do I really want to do that? So how do you get people comfortable enough to do that? And how did you find that courage within yourself to do it? Because you said at first it wasn't there and you had to like find your voice. So how did that happen? Right. So the trick is in writing your first easy book. Again, it's getting something done that you could do it, and then the world doesn't end. Like you don't see the world stopping because you told them that you had a boyfriend at 5, right? So it's doing the first one. So my first book was, for me, Dream Big. I needed to dream big. So that first book was super short, did really well on Amazon. Amazing, got translated to Spanish. Great book, right? I was like, wow, I could do that. So with this book, I was even more vulnerable because I did it the first time a little bit, and I realized that nothing bad happened, so I'll do it again. And with the next book, so with I don't even know what's going to happen in the latest book because I'm so bold already, right? With doing it 13 times. Right. But every time I do it, it's never the same. So what I do with my clients is, let's do your first easy book. Do it for yourself. What have you learned? Let's keep it simple, 10,000, 15,000 words. Anybody could do that. And then let's write your real book. So what happened for me was that I would try to write this book first. Never done a book, never finished a book. This book is over 300 pages long. This book, Styling Faith. Yeah, Styling Faith is super big, right? So I wanted to write like the big whale of a book first. Never been that bold before. I never shared my story of struggle. My family was going to read it. My friends were going to read it. Outing people on how they were bullying me, Right. So that makes no sense. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that you start with something simple. It's like with babies. What do you do with babies? You're a mom. You give them milk, like breast milk or formula, and then you give them liquids, and you give them soups, and you give them simple stuff. And then you graduate to the hard stuff. And book writing is the same way. So how many pages you said 10,000 to 15,000 words? How many pages? Yeah, that's not that much. So they are about 250 words per page. That would be about 50, 70 pages. That's a great book because people are not reading big book. So that's like the longest book I'm ever going to have probably. And I love that I had chapters. So if you want to know about shoes, you can go to the shoes chapter, read that and get out. Read about colors, you can go to that. But reading it from all pages, I don't know that people are doing that anymore. So short books are the way to go.
Yeah, I'm still like on page, I don't know, 600 of the Goldfinch, and I can't finish it. It's too whatever. But what I was going to say is that people don't want boring books. Mm-hmm. You don't pick up a book to be bored. You want that juicy stuff. So if you can, as the writer, as the entrepreneur, or whoever is creating this, can get that in your mind, like the juicier it is, the more the audience is going to respond. So it might feel like, nobody's going to like me. People aren't going to respond to this. I'm just going to keep my cards close to my chest. Right. That'll be safer. You're not going to get the response that you want.
Right, but the book is for you. When you see that first, at the gift, the first person that buys the book, it's you. Yeah. That's huge. You want to be entertained. So I always tell my clients, put yourself in the reader's shoes. Will they read that sentence? I always also say, if you can say it with 10 words, don't use 20. Right?
I read that. You said that someplace. I read that.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because people have fillers. I don't need to have a whole bunch of pages. I only say what I need to say and I get out. That's it. I don't need to be saying a whole bunch of stuff before that. So the book is for you first. Mm-hmm. You're going to be happy with it. It's your story. After that, if you don't like it, that's okay. I like it. So my books, I'm a big fan of my books.
So I see you at home. You're like, this looks good. I'm going to read this one.
That's so funny. So many of my books is funny because many of them are on audio version too. And I don't release that to the public. I do that for like my community. Mm-hmm. But the first time ever, this book, A Match Made in Heaven, will be a released audiobook as well. And that's where, how I'm animated, I use my hands, where I'm going to really blend the flavor of the book. So if any author out there is listening and they like to have like a voiceover artist, please don't do that. Read your own book.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Because the intonation, how you were feeling in that moment. You give it life to a book like nobody else can.
So when is the Spanish book coming out?
The Spanish book coming out. So this is the funny thing, that Spanish was my first language.
Yeah.
It's not anymore. So when I write a book, it gets translated by somebody else. I do read it to make sure that it got done right. So two of my books have been translated to Spanish. So they always come out in English first, make sure that they do really well, and then they get translated. So hopefully later in the year.
Because I'm thinking I want to hear you. I want to hear you read it in Spanish.
Oh, yeah. I totally would do that. Yes.
That would be spectacular.
It would be hilarious.
I wouldn't know, but
you would. Well, the thing is me. Yeah. So even though the language is different, the voice, the intonation, the jokes, the laugh, it's me. And that's the biggest compliment. When people pick up any of my books, they're like, Catherine, it's like you're sitting next to me. That's the biggest compliment you can give an author because he's saying you're being authentic.
So let me ask you a question about that, because I find this with branding as well, that a big part of the reason people get stuck, and that thing we were talking about at the beginning of like incorporating, marrying all parts of themselves, is because they haven't accepted themselves yet. They haven't, I don't know what it was for you around teaching, or what the perception was around it, or I don't know, like if you felt like you weren't ready or whatever, but there are things that people don't want to take ownership about themselves. Right. And that's what blocks them. It's not really what other people think of them. It's that ownership piece.
Yeah. For me, it was 23. So I'm like, what do I have to teach? And my English was not what it is today. So I just felt all of that. But so that's why my writing classes are not just about the writing, because there's so much more goes into that. Right. We talk about the mindset of a writer. So again, everything that we go through, it's part of the journey of the process. So being a confidence building coach before allows me to bring that aspect in, and I can coach people through their fears, because I had those fears too. Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
I am sure that you are an amazing coach. Anybody who would be interested in writing, would be lucky to have you for sure. One question I have is, should everybody write a book? And in entrepreneur world, people say, write a book so you can get on stage. Write a book so you can get on podcasts. Don't write a book because you should be spending your time on money-generating activities. Don't write a book. You're not ready in your business. So there are lots of different opinions about it. What's your opinion about, should everybody write a book? Should entrepreneurs write a book? What kind of book should an entrepreneur write? And is there a best time to do that in your business?
Right. That's a great question. So yes, I think everyone should write at least one, although I think once you write one, you can't stop. So I would say, for example, that book at the time was the book for my business, right? Because it was all about style. But the first one I wrote was a motivational book. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about your audience. Like, it's going to get out there. They're going to read it. They're going to find out about it. Don't put something out there that you're not comfortable dealing with yet. I would say that. If you are dealing with something, write it. Don't publish it. I find, especially if you're struggling with your brand and who you are and putting everything together, write a book. Because you're going to be able to see it. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be so cathartic that you're going to be able to release it and put it out there. And again, the right people will flock to you because of that. Mm-hmm. So if you're an entrepreneur, you really cannot afford not to do it, especially when the book is short. Mm-hmm. I mean, my class is 6 weeks. If you follow the steps, you can finish the book in 6 weeks.
So how do people find out about the class? Where do they go?
So they can go to confidenceunchained.org.
Confidenceunchained.org.
And
okay.
that,
and we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, of course. And then they'll be able to sign up for the class. So the class is do it yourself. So it's at your own pace.
Okay. There's no start date?
There's no start date. Okay. Yeah. So you can start anytime, and then you get a new lesson every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then that's it.
Yeah. And then if they want extra support, can they?
Yeah. So they can all totally work with me one-on-one. So one of the things that I decided to add was coaching for at least 3 months. Because some people don't have the time to do the class. They want more hand-holding.
Yeah.
So we'll do that one-on-one coaching where I walk them through it. And sometimes they don't have time at all to do any of that. Then I'll ghostwrite the book for them. I'm really excited about that.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So ghostwriters, that has like a bad rep, like, oh, you kind of like did not do the work and somebody else is going to do the book for you. And really the way that I do it, because I want to be authentic, I want to get in your head. Mm. So I'm going to find your words, like, who are you? And I'm going to write the book like you would write it. So it's your words, it's your story. We get to work together either remotely or in person. And I write the book that's inside of you and I just bring it out and it's your name. My name is not anywhere, but I bring your baby up to the world.
Oh, you're like, you're a writing doula.
I love that. Yes, just like that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really their word. So when the person reads it, they're like, yeah, I said that. Yeah, I would totally say that. And I would say it like that too.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it. Wow. You've given us so much information already. So as we're wrapping up, is there like 2 things would you say to someone who's thinking about writing a book, or maybe they've started writing a book and they're struggling, that they can do to really push that baby out and really get some momentum around there?
Yeah, absolutely. Surround yourself with authors. There are so many communities out there. So I have a community of Writing Made Simple. So they can put that on Facebook and find it. It's a free, amazing Facebook group. So put yourself in that place where people are writing. And then I want them to go back to why they started writing the book. Because the why is going to bring them back. Because sometimes we're so overstimulated. There's the phone, there's the internet, there's the TV, there's your friends, there's your kids, there's everything, right? But if you sit still for a moment and you listen to yourself, you're going to find that place that says, I have a story. And then you're going to make the time, or you're going to find someone like me that can help you find the time. Because I have the same 24 hours that everybody else has.
That's right.
And I have a daughter. I'm active in my church. I have a family. I have friends. I like the outdoors, and I'm writing, and I have a business. So, and I do all that in 24 hours. So if I could do it, anybody can do it. And the fact that I'm also a foreigner still, right? So like English was not my first language.
Right.
So if I could do it, anybody could do it.
Well, you also happen to be a phenom. So, I mean, I don't know if that's true. But what I will say is it goes back to what you were saying before of saying no to anything that is not in alignment with your vision and your priorities. If a book is calling to you, you can't say yes to, maybe doing a speaking tour at that same time, right? So that's really, really great tip. So I want to thank you so much for being here. It's been great catching up. Tell us one more time. It's confidenceunchained.org. The name of the class is
Write Like a Pro.
Write Like a Pro. And anything that's coming up for you that you want to share?
Yeah, so I'm excited about the book. So I love that we had this conversation, because a match made in heaven is for everyone. I know that I'm faith-based, but if you're struggling with finding who are you, like, you can replace the word faith with anything else. Like, what is it about you that you're not putting forth? If you're flatlining in your business and in your life, more than likely it's because you're not being who you are completely. Pick up the book, A Match Made in Heaven, and it's going to be everywhere in any format that you want. and it's going to help you because he helped me. The book is really the process that I went through to be able to marry my two loves, which are my my calling and my vocation.
That's awesome. Awesome. One last question. What does it mean to you to thrive?
Oh, to be myself to the fullest and to wear as many colors as I can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It was so great having my dear friend on the show. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for joining us. Until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, it's Heather again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Thrive. Every week we try to bring you people and information to help you change your life for the better, to grow your business, to expand your thinking, and to open your heart. If you did enjoy this content, I would so appreciate it if you would go to iTunes and review us. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. And if you found this information helpful or useful in any way, please share it on out. Let your friends and family know about Thrive. And finally, if you'd like to know more about me, you can visit me at heatherpoduska.com. Until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes.